don't know if this looks familiar to you, but maybe you've worked a pattern before where you've had to work an edge of stitches along an end of your fabric. So for example, in this case we worked rows, and by working the rows here at the edge you get an uneven edge where your stitches, because these are double crochets, single, double crochets, single, a row of double crochets and single crochets, and this edge becomes kind of ragged and uneven. Then you have to work stitches into that to make a border, for example, or to join this to another piece of fabric, for example a square or something else. And then the pattern says work stitches evenly along this edge, or work one stitch in every row, and then you can get a really uneven pattern there. If I really zoom into that, you can see how uneven this is. If you work a next stitch in there, for example, you say, okay, do I have to work it in there? But then the next one is not so neat, so you work it in there, but then that's only one loop, and and then this entire edge just becomes unkept and uneven, and I don't like this at all. So I don't want to do this. What I've seen is a really cool and neat trick, and I'd like to show that trick to you, because I've done that already a little bit on the other end of this fabric. What I've done is a trick that I saw on the blog of the Felted Button, Susan's blog, and what she does is she works a series of slip stitches, and then in those slip stitches she works the border. And you can see here that this border is really neat. Even though it's been done in a different color compared to the slip stitches, it's a really neat border. And if I zoom in a little bit more, you can really see that very nicely. You can see how evenly and beautifully that border is worked there. So what I'd like to show you is exactly how she did that. What I'm doing, I'm going to be using Scheepjes stone washed yarn, because that's what I've been using to make this panel. This panel is part of the Demelza blanket, so if you've done that you'll recognize this. So what I'll be doing is I'm going to be working an edge of slip stitches, and then into those slip stitches work the border. And this is a cool trick that you can use on any panel or square that you haven't worked in the round but you worked with rows, or if you've done a blanket and also your edges are uneven. For example, you've done a stitch sampler with all different rows, and that edge, to make that edge nice and straight so you can do a border onto that. So this technique is perfect for that. So I have a slip knot on my hook, and this is the edge along which we're going to be making the slip stitches. I'm going to insert my hook in the first stitch. This happens to be a single crochet here at the edge. I'm just going to insert my stitch there. I do my first stitch there. Just going to punch my hook in there, in that last stitch, with a slip stitch. The next stitch is a double crochet stitch, so I want to do 2 slip stitches there. So on the first, the double crochet often has 2 parts. So I'm going to take this first one here. I'm just going to go through that loop, hook up, and work a slip stitch. Then the next one is through the bottom part of the double crochet, and here I'm actually going to take both loops because that's easier here. I'm going to take 2 loops and work the slip stitch. And you can see you've got 3 slip stitches in there. What's very important about these slip stitches is to keep them loose, because slip stitches, they tend to kind of pull tight. If you find doing that is kind of difficult for you, go up a few hook sizes relative to the hook size that you use to make your work piece. Now the next stitch is again a single crochet. So I'm just going to work 1 slip stitch through there, then again a double crochet. So first 1 loop, the double crochet, and then that second part of the double crochet where I again want to take both loops. And continue again. The next stitch is a single crochet stitch. So what I'm doing is I'm working a 1 slip stitch on the single crochets and I'm working 2 on the double crochets. Now if your pattern, for example, calls for work so many stitches evenly spread along the edge, you don't per se want to go with the rhythm of 2 on a double, 1 on a single, or 3 on a treble, but then spread these stitches evenly along the edge. And that way you can make as many slip stitches as you need to work stitches. And a third one again. You can see how you're getting this edge here. If you look at it from the back, you see all those little loops there. That's from the back. On the front, you can see you've got these slip stitches on the edge of your fabric. So I'm going to continue and work these loops here also. I'll show you once more. I've got a single crochet here that I just want to kind of punch my hook into, and sometimes they can be hard to get into, especially if you've done a really good job of working away yarn tails. They can be really hard to just get into properly, and I'm actually, there we go, having some difficulty with this one. And then on the next one, this is a double crochet, so that's 1 and 2. Going to continue with this until I get here to my last stitch, then I'll just show you how to work in these stitches. When you're done, this is what your edge looks like. Just a tip, you might want to undo this knot here right with that first stitch, that standing stitch we started with, because then you just got that all a little bit neater if you undo that knot. So then that's the first. Now you really only have a slip stitch there and not also the slip knot, so I've just taken that off. Now in these slip stitches we're now going to work the edge of the fabric. So again, I've got a slip knot on my hook, and you can start in the first stitch or anywhere else you like. It doesn't matter how you do this. I'm just quickly going to show you how to work in these stitches. So to work in the first stitch, I'm going to go through both loops and then work, for example, a single crochet. Just zoom in a little bit more, then you can see it maybe a bit better. Then the next stitch, go through both those loops and work a single crochet, or a double, or whatever the pattern calls for. It's about the concept here. And the next one, single crochet. And what now you especially see why you don't want these stitches to be too tight, these slip stitches, because then you're going to be wrestling to get your hook in there. And if this, and I've now used a different color, the blue as opposed to the pink slip stitches, so that you can really see how you're working them. But if these two are the same color, you're not going to even see that little stripe there. You're just going to see these single crochets. You will not even see those slip stitches. They'll just totally vanish. And your edge will be absolutely perfect. Because let me just work a few more stitches and you can just really see how this looks. So I'm working one more. There we go. Now look at this edge. It's really, really pretty. It's clean and neat. If you look to the back, it's also neat and tidy. And this trick to work along an uneven edge to get a beautiful number of stitches here, it's really cool. So this way you can now continue, and for example when you get to your last stitch here, you can easily go around the corner and work in your stitches here to the bottom, and likewise here if you work your stitches here at the top, also very easy, and then go around the corner. So this way you can make a perfect edge along any fabric that has an uneven edge to start with. So first you make the slip stitches and the number of stitches that you need, and then you can work your edge or your border in those slip stitches.